Hi folks, for today's project I'd like to talk about softening an edge with wet on dry. Now first I want to show you how to do this just with a line, a simple brush stroke. So if I come in, I do a simple brush stroke, come in right next to it with some clean water. Lovely. I got this nice transition, a beautiful fade. Let me see if I can aim this at the camera so you have the stroke once more with feeling. You have the stroke, rinse, knock off a little of that excess water, and then come in right next to it. And that gives you this beautiful transition. If you begin to bloom up a little bit, and that's what's going on right there, you can make a secondary pass, but you have to be careful because you might lift. Now, to come in, that's an ultramarine blue, by the way. Ultramarine blue is very lifty color. If I come in with phthalo blue, okay, there's phthalo blue. Nice loaded up wet stroke, rinse, knock off the excess moisture. Now I'm coming in right next to it. You can see it already stained a little bit, but now it's softening. Now I'm going to also give you the option of a transition where if you angle your brush, you can pick up a little bit of dry brush as a transition. Yeah, that's not the way I meant to do it. Okay, so I came in and you can see this side, the tip of the brush gave me a nice crisp edge. This side, it softened out a bit through dry brush. Now, if I wanted to pull down a soft transition, what I'm going to do, what do you mean by pull down a soft transition? Okay. So say I have an edge up here, a tree, a fluffy cloud, whatever. Rinse, knock off the excess. So I can come in and level that off. The initial stroke comes down on dry paper. That's what gives you that crispness. But here, I pulled it down with extra water on my brush, still on top of dry paper. Now, I can blot the brush, pick up some of that excess moisture. Again, this is ultramarine blue, which is a pretty lifty color anyway. If I want to get cute and puddle the edge down there, I can drop the excess moisture in, rock it back that way, and you can see how the water is pushing the pigment down in that direction. Now, as I look at this, that can give me a few different ideas about mistiness, about maybe rounding a rock-like form that has a texture to it, depending on how much of a bloom I want in there. But just to get that soft transition on one side against a crisp edge on the other, it's a very useful thing to be able to do. Now I'm going to talk to you about how to use this for creating a landscape in the mist. So let's get started with a misty scene, just so that we can do a wet on dry and soften an area. Now, if I come in with a color, and I'm going to start out with something that's not lifty. I'm using a phthalo as a base. In a perfect world, I'd probably start with a nice soft wash in the sky, but I would prefer to come in with something that allows you to just see how I'm working this wet on dry right now. I used a pyrrole red mixed with the phthalo blue to give me a lower saturation color. Now this is going to be the mountain in the background. I want to make sure I do this relatively quickly. I'm going right across some of the other shrubs that are in my image. I'm going right over the tree trunk. Oh my God, Bonnie, why are you going over the tree trunk? Look, it's going to be pale. And the tree trunk is very dark, backlit. So it doesn't matter. Now, here I'm coming in, just softening out that edge. Just a damp area at the bottom of that big washy stroke. Now, of course, I just realized I didn't tape the edges of this paper. Oh well. I'm going to take a little bit of paper towel, pick up some of that puddling. I want some of that to be crisp. What I worry about is if there's so much water that heads up to that edge, then this area dries, that re-wets the area below it, and I wind up with blooms coming down, which is a different project. So we wait for paint to dry. Okay, I used my blow dryer. I cooked this a little bit. I have a nice puddled edge up here where the excess water moved up. Now, let's see. Also continuing some wet on dry. Now I think what I'm gonna do is gonna grab a little, I want to go into the trees immediately, but no, I will be good. I'm going to get some the Perylene and the Phthalo Blue. I'm a big fan of Perylene Green. I love that rich green. And I'm going to do the reverse of what I just did, meaning I'm going to have the crisper edge down here moving up into the mist. Now this is the water. This is reflection down here. So when I put this down, I'm going to come in across with some horizontal moves to give a sense of the rippling in the water. Oh, hello, I still had some pink in there, some quinacridone. Whatever, that's okay. Now we have a lot of mist on the water, so I'm rinsing, knocking off the excess. I'm going to give myself a transition, a very soft transition, and I'm going to bring it right down into the area I already painted in. Okay, so let me soften out that edge a little bit. Now the colors I just used here, the Perylene, the Phthalo Blue, and that little smidgen of quinacridone that I picked up from the corner of my mixing area. I freely admit I am a slob, but I kind of like that, so I'm not going to mess with it. Now, I have to wait for this to dry, because if it's wet on dry, it's gotta dry. Okay, I cooked it a little bit more. Now I'm coming in with a little group of trees that are in the middle of the river. So I'm coming in with a little bit of sense of those trees. But as I move down towards the mist, I'm going to fade it off. So rinse, knock off the excess, fade. It's fading off into the mist. So somewhere down in here is the bottom of that little island. But there's all this lovely mist. So I can come in. There are a few trees in there. Oh boy, I just found a big chunk of quinacridone in the corner of that mixing area. Whatever. So now where one tree meets the other, there might be some blooms in that area, which doesn't particularly bother me. I think it might be fun. Okay, coming down into the mist. Rinse, knock off the excess. If it's too wet, you'll get a lot of blooms. I'm using my beat up Scepter Gold brush again, because I still haven't been able to get to my studio. So I use what I have. Now I'll let that dry, but you can see how the trees are now coming out of that mist. Let me bring in a little dilute area, because that mist, it's not laying evenly. It's coming in and out. Okay, so I have this area of trees. Eventually I might come in with a couple of little tree trunks in there. Maybe. We'll see. I'll hang loose about it. Now there's also, oops, the fun part is, as I was saying, the fun part is that I'm working from an image on my phone. So periodically my phone will drop the image. Just hang loose. See what happens. We got to work with these things. Now, I've got some beautiful trees over here that I could play with. I've got some interesting trees over here. But before I do that, I would probably want to get the background in first. So let me rinse this. Pull in another wash brush. Now, if we're talking washes, make sure you mix this. I'm going to come in with the colors down here in the water. And that's just fun washes. So I make sure my blue is active. I'm going to make sure a clean area of quinacridone is active, because I want some of that beautiful morning color. Let me get a little bit of my orange. This is a Winsor orange and a quinacridone magenta. Okay. Now remember, the orange, if you go back and forth over orange and blue, you're going to get gray. So try and wait on that. Now I'm glazing it right up into the mist air, into the reflections in the water, and then fading off in that mist area. But you're going over a layer. So do it swiftly. Don't go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You can see it's beginning to soften some of this color. So I'll let that simmer down. Here's the blow dryer. Okie doke, everything's cooked again. Now I'm coming in with the drama of that strong, dark tree trunk. Yeah, I mixed the purple. This is a phthalo blue and a pyrrole red. And I'm not softening the edge of this. I want some nice, strong, vivid, contrasty color that will pull this forward. In a perfect world, I'd also be doing some technique here, but right now, when I say technique, maybe some plastic wrap, maybe some sgraffito, some dry brushing, but that's not for today. Let me just put it in a couple of branches. This is all wet on dry, so everything has a crisp edge. Okay, there we go. Now over here, I've also got some really nifty trees, and I'm going to put these in wet on dry as well. This time I'm going to use some ultramarine blue, and I'll mix it with a little bit of cad red. That should give me a heaviness that I want. It might also sediment in the areas down in the landscape, down in the ground layer. There we go. Let's see. I actually want a little bit of that red to sediment. It's not going to give me a saturated, high purple, screaming, vivid, fluorescent purple. It's going to be nice, rich, muted purple. See, with all this wet on dry, I can get a lot of texture, and if I come in with some green, since I keep picking up some of that quinacridone magenta, I'm just going to go with it and use it in my mix with the phthalo. Now I'm coming in with, just some brushwork on the side, a little bit of wet on dry brushwork to give a feel for that wonderful tangled area of leaf. I can fade off with the dry brush. I could fade off with that wet on dry. I don't really want to do this kind of soft transition right now. I want this to be hard edge, crisp, and in your face, because this area is not affected by the mist. This is like right here in front of us. Okay, so you can see where I'm going with that. There's some little plants right in here. And I'll come in and just drop in a little bit of this stuff. Have some fun with the brushwork, hey? With wet on dry, you get a lot of action. And if I want to come in with a little bit of red stem, so the fun thing is that if you fade off in mist like this, if you've got some detailing up front that you would come in with, remember, sgraffito is unforgiving. It'll give me nice details, but once these guys are down, they're down. I'm not going to be able to change that. just because. I figured a little spatter might be fun. Now, this gives me detail, pulls forward. That gives me soft edges, moves way back. You can play with this. I can put more branches, more leaves in here. This isn't quite as finished as I'd like to do it. I'd put more texture in there. But you do get to see what happens with these soft transitions, the wet on dry transitions. See y'all soon.